This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And this gentleman is in high demand because so much information is kind of swirling around the Las Vegas shooter, his girlfriend, kind of topic here is girlfriend, guns, and gambling, along with a little bit of ISIS, which has, again, been, even though they released a new propaganda video claiming responsibility for the shooting, claiming the shooter as one of their jihadists. Law enforcement doesn't believe it. But trying to piece together why the shooter did what he did. And to help us do that, we're pleased to be joined by a retired FBI special agent and criminal profiler. He's consulted actually on the show, Criminal Minds. He's also the author of A Journey to the Center of the Mind, a 3-part memoir series, A Journey to the Center of the Mind. He is James Fitzgerald. Mr. Fitzgerald, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here, Dan. Good morning to you and Amy and your listeners.
Good morning. And so why don't you just, what we're trying to do here is ask the right questions, not engage in conspiracy theories, not make fact-free conclusions based on information we don't have. So why don't you start by telling us what questions you have from all of the information, bits and pieces of it that are swirling around this case?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions, as I'm sure all your listeners do, and those of us who, east of the Mississippi woke up Monday morning and heard about this horrendous incident the night before. The questions are still swirling. I watch the news conferences every time they come on, and we're hoping to hear something more from the police. I know as a profiler, as an investigator, we're going to get information from this person during what they call a psychological autopsy. There's the real autopsy, of course, that takes place in a morgue, but the psychological one's going to tell us a lot about what made this guy tick. Stephen Paddock. They're going to be looking into all the people this person surrounded himself with over the last year or more, certainly up to this past weekend, and, of course, go into his computers, his telephone, every electronic device he's had, his GPS system, where he's been, what he's been doing, and somewhere down the line, something is going to pop up that it may make no sense to me or you, Dan, or anybody who thinks logically, but somewhere down the line we will find some sort of a causal factor, a trigger moment. I hate to use that term in this case. Something went on in his personal or professional life that said, the answer to my problems is to go and do this mass shooting in Las Vegas at this concert, from this altitude, from this distance, and somehow this will solve my problems.
And we're learning this morning,
what that is, we don't know.
We're learning this morning that he has purchased 33 guns over the past year. They were purchased in 4 different states. But how important is it that Mary Lou Danley, his girlfriend, is back on American soil, flying in last night from the Philippines to Los Angeles? We know that he wired her her family $100,000. But her sisters came forward this morning and said that he sent her away because she would have stopped him if she had been there.
Well, the sisters certainly have a reason for saying that. We don't know yet what her role is. Is she a gun mole, to use an old term from the 40s and 50s film noir, or is she an innocent bystander about this who knew nothing? She's going to have some clues. She's going to have some information to provide law enforcement. She obviously wasn't in the room with him that night. She wasn't, reloading his magazines for him, but she probably has some ancillary, tangential information about this and about the man himself that somehow is going to at least put a few of these external puzzle pieces together and make it a little more sense for those of us trying to get some kind of rationale for what this guy did. There is none, and don't get me wrong, but even in his twisted mind, something that went wrong, it will explain political. Everyone's saying he's apolitical, a-religious. You could argue he's a-human, meaning he just has no regard for human life, the random choice of his victims. But somewhere in that 3-legged stool of religiosity, politics, and just basically inhumanity, we're going to have some kind of an answer to why he did this. At least we should.
What about the reports and the pictures that show a note on a side table that appears to have some writing on it, the possibility that he left a note behind? And law enforcement's resistance to comment on that at this point?
Yeah, and they have every right to keep that as singular information for now. They may be trying to tie some loose ends with that, and there may be some names referenced in there or places. They want to interview those people first before the media or other people get there. So whether this guy has a manifesto, and a manifesto could be, everyone thinks, 50 to 100 pages. It could be just a few pages long, but it could somehow explain what he's doing. Did he make videotapes? Looks like he had cameras set up outside the hotel room. He has some sort of electronics acumen, it seems, along with clearly his acumen of how high-powered weapons start, how to load and reload, and is also as well to put these bump stocks in, whatever they're called, to convert the weaponry to fully auto. And again, there's a lot of pre-offense behavior this guy undertook to get ready for this big day. He didn't wake up Sunday morning and said, I have an idea. I'm going to go and kill 60 people and injure 500. This was pre-planned well in advance of that.
And we're hearing reports this morning that there was even a camera on the food cart that he had outside of his hotel room so that he could see them coming down the hallway a little clearer. Isn't it just strange that even hotel security or the cleaning staff didn't notice these cameras that he had set up?
Yeah, you'd like in retrospect for someone to be able to say, hey, these strange cameras, let me call the police and then see if they can figure out why this guy's doing this. But again, this is all part of his tactical methodology, his pre-offense behavior. And quite frankly, I've told a few people this, I really think, along with everything else that turned out, the rationale behind this guy's action, this may have very well been a suicide by cop scenario. And that's bad enough as it is if one guy pulls a gun or two on some police officers and winds up getting killed. But, man, don't take out others with you, certainly not, upwards of 60 with, hundreds of injured on the side. This guy wanted to end it all. He wanted to go out in a bang. And, again, I hate to use these sort of metaphors, but that's exactly what he did. Now the question is, why and how can we prevent this type of thing from happening in the future if that's all ever possible?
This is
in a country of 320 million people.
This is being reported as him, meticulously carrying this out, and you make the point about his pre-offensive behavior. But the idea of ammonium nitrate being found in his car, reports of him potentially scouting other locations, the Chance the Rapper concert a couple days before has been referenced this morning. But how do you process that? Because he couldn't go into that Mandalay hotel room and do what he did and think he was going to get out of there to do whatever he had planned with the ammonium nitrate in his car.
Yeah, and who knows exactly what that is. It's one thing studying and reviewing how to do this mass murder, with high-powered weaponry from a high altitude and distance. I did, I'm doing my research, and I was familiar with this from 2011. Don't forget the massacre in Norway, where 77 people were killed. There was a bombing in Oslo, a car bomb of sorts, and then this guy drove to an island, Utoya, and 66 more people were killed there. And that's certainly one of the largest mass shootings in Europe to this day. Yeah. There's also, we go back in time, the University of Texas shooting in 1966, where 18 were killed. But a lot of people aren't tying in here. It's a little bit different, but I actually worked the D.C. sniper case in 2002. And I think I'm the only one I heard so far that mentioned that it's actually the 15th anniversary of that shooting was the night he started shooting. Actually, by the calendar, it was October 2nd in D.C. when the first of this 10 shootings in that case occurred. 10 deaths, I should say. There's actually more shootings than that. But who knows? He's probably, we're going to find he's a student of history. He probably studied each of these shootings, of course, and other ones. And while some are from high altitude, some are ground level, some involve bombs included with the shooting, I think we're going to find out that this guy did research on all of these things just to better improve his skill set and his trade craft in order to do the most damage he could possibly undertake in one particular sitting.
What we know about two other categories of information, his professional history, IRS, postal carrier, accountant for a defense contractor, and then his family history, his father being a convicted felon bank robber and also described as a psychopath. Either of those areas, anything stand out to you as particularly remarkable or important?
Well, Paddock clearly is an outlier in terms of any sort of a criminal profile one would build. And I built profiles, about about these potential types of guys back in the day. Someone, we look at violent crime mostly being committed by 15 to 30-year-old, men, and lower socioeconomic status. And this guy definitely wasn't that. Somebody who's a religious, very much hung up on their religiosity or politics. So far, that doesn't seem to fit this guy. What is interesting, I find, and we in the profiling business as well as psychologists around the world are always interested in the concept of nature versus nurture. What causes a Ted Kaczynski in a family to become a serial bomber, as known as the Unabomber? Mm-hmm. Then he has a younger brother, 7 years younger, who's a nice average family man who did nothing wrong his whole life, so nothing violent. And now we have this guy Paddock, whose father was a serial bank robber, actually on the FBI's 10 most wanted list in the late 1960s. Where does nature, where does his gene pool tie in there? Is this actually a tribute or a homage to his father of some sort, saying, "Hey, look, Dad, it took me all these years of my life to finally, meet up to your standards, but look what I did. I killed more people than you even ever thought of killing in your career." Who knows what kind of psychological mindset is taking place in this guy's head? This could have something to do with Daddy Dearest, and that's one of the reasons, tie in some other reasons, no doubt, of why this event took place, when it did, and how it did.
But the Daddy Dearest thing at age 64?
Unusual, no doubt unusual, but some people don't reach these epiphanies, if you will, until later in life, when he's looking at everything that's transpired, and it may tie into some gambling debts. It may tie into some sort of a radicalization, which at least ISIS is claiming. I think they may be in desperate throes right now and trying to grab onto anything, but I can't rule that out at this point. Again, a hatred of some ideology, be it, was he, did he try to get into this concert and the tickets were sold out? Could it be something as simple as that? So he took it out on this group, or do these group of people represent something to him? Mostly these people, when they start killing, they look for representational targets, these long-distance type killers, who fit some sort of a criteria that is antithetical to what they believe in or where they always knew they didn't fit. Again, I'm not locking into that theory now, but it could have been very convenient he chose this time and place. Hey, there's a big crowd. They could have been a conference of shoe salesmen or Mormons or, fill-in. It could have been a rap concert. Who knows? It just so happens this was the concert taking place this night, and this one it worked out.
But it's possible that these concert goers represented some representation of something he found antithetical, to use your words, and they were specifically chosen.
Exactly right, and not by name or actual physical description. It sounds like it was random men, woman, young, old.
Right.
But here they are, and perhaps he saw country western music fans as something he didn't like or something that represented a principle he didn't believe in.
Yeah, because the weekend before he rented a high-end condo right across, that overlooked a venue where Chance the Rapper was performing and did not do anything there. So it's strange because they're following, his locations from the weeks leading up to the shooting.
He is,
and that could be very possible, Amy, that he actually specifically targeted one group, and that could have just been sort of a reconnoiter or a reconnaissance the weekend before, just to kind of get his bearings and his sight points and what have you in terms of carrying out the actual mass murder the week later.
He is retired FBI special agent, criminal profiler, including famously the Unabomber case, which he mentioned. He's been a creative consultant on the TV show Criminal Minds, and he's the author of the 3-part memoir, A Journey to the Center of the Mind. James Fitzgerald, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
You're welcome, Dan and Amy. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're